Hello, and welcome to the Bharat Talks podcast. We have joining us today Mr. D T Achary, ex-General Secretary of the Lok Sabha, who is also a Research Advisory Council member of the upcoming National Legislators Conference, Bharat. Hello, sir, and welcome. To kick things off, could you tell us a bit about how NLC Bharat imbibes the spirit of cooperative federalism?
There is what is called cooperative federalism. Cooperative federalism means the union and the states have to cooperate in all these nation building activities so that the country gets the benefit and the country progresses. Now, so far as the lawmaking is concerned, this is the most important key function of legislative bodies. Union Parliament makes laws for the whole country, and state legislatures make laws for their own states. There are in fact three lists in the which are called the legislative list in the constitution, and union list, state list, and then we have a concurrent list. There can be a conflict between the union parliament and the state legislature in respect of certain items which are there in the concurrent list. But the constitution is very clear on this point. The constitution does not want to create any kind of conflict between the union and the states. So, constitution has found a way to resolve the apparent conflict. That is, if Parliament makes a law and the state law is repugnant to that, or some provisions in the Parliament made law, then it is the Parliament law which will prevail and not the state law. The state law or the provisions in the state law, to the extent of repugnancy, will be void. So that is how the constitution has resolved that problem. This is not very typical of federal structure, because federal structure, as we find in America, it is different. There the states are more important than the union, than the federal unit. Here it is not so. Because of the peculiar situation in our country, Parliament has more powers, and Parliament has overwhelming powers than the state legislatures. And Parliament has the residuary powers. If a particular item is not there either in the state list or in the concurrent list, then that in a natural way goes to Parliament. Parliament alone can make legislations. Now, but there are many areas where the union and the states will have to cooperate. And therefore, the concept of cooperative federalism has come in. And the Prime Minister quite often talks about cooperative federalism. So only with the cooperation of states and the union, problems the people face in respect of development or in respect of other things are addressed. Now, so far as this platform is concerned, this has been conceived as an attempt to enable the members of the legislature to share their experiences. After all, they are running the country, and therefore, they are the key players in the democratic system. So, they have a lot of experience which they have gained over a period of time, and they want to share it with others, each other. That is the main thrust of this conference. Legislators have really many issues to discuss. The Indian legislatures have their own problems in the sense the assemblies don't meet quite often. The days of meetings are very, very less, and earlier Parliament used to meet for more than 100 days, but now that is also coming down. There has been demand for increasing the number of sittings of Parliament, but instead of increasing the number of sittings, it is now coming down. That is a trend which causes some disquiet. And in the state legislatures, actually, the situation is worse. Because there, they meet just for 1 week or 2 weeks, and after that they adjourn. And in the states, there is a problem which we find. Many of the legislations, many of the laws that are made are first made through ordinances. These ordinances are issued immediately after the House adjourns or House is prorogued. Because the ordinances can be promulgated only after the House is prorogued. And there the bureaucracy, they are playing a major part in that. They promulgate the ordinance. Of course, the governor promulgates the ordinance, and then it becomes a law. Sometimes it may not come before the assembly immediately or in the next session or something. Otherwise, it has to come before the assembly. Many examples where the ordinances were issued and reissued over a period of 15 years. It happened in Bihar. And the Supreme Court had to step in and say that it is a fraud on the Constitution of India. But the point is, the bureaucratic approach is to make a law, enforce it, and as far as possible bypass the legislature. Now this attitude is seen everywhere. This is a major problem which legislators are facing. Why can't they bring normal bills before the House and pass them? That's a normal way of making law. Instead of bringing the ordinance. Ordinances are issued only when it is absolutely necessary, when there is an urgency and the houses are not meeting. At that time, immediate legislation is required. Only then ordinances are issued. But here it has become a regular practice. So the ordinary lawmaking is the ordinances only. This is a problem which they can discuss. The second thing is that the Indian legislatures are very unique in the sense that the members are not able to speak freely. There are two reasons. One is they are overruled by the presence of the Chief Minister. Because Chief Minister is a more powerful person in the state. And when the Chief Minister is very powerful, naturally the Speaker, etc., is in a kind of a subordinate position. And to that extent, the Assembly suffers. In the sense, the Assembly, is the lawmaking body, and the executive is the creation of the Assembly. But actual experience is that the executive becomes very, very powerful and the legislature becomes weak. This is something which we have seen for a long time. And I have often said that when we have a strong leader, then we have a weak parliament. There was a time when we used to hear that Parliament has spoken. Parliament has spoken means Parliament has a mind. And we used to think that Parliament, as an entity, as the supreme legislative body of this country and supreme representative body of this country, it has a mind of its own. It ought to have a mind of its own as Parliament. But now, that is not how it is now. Because there is a majority party, and then there are opposition members, opposition parties. The majority party members, that is the ruling party members, they are never free to speak their mind. Even if they don't like a particular legislative measure that comes before the House, they will have to support it. They keep quiet. That means they are not freely exercising the right to speak in the House. As you know, the Constitution has given them the freedom of speech in the House. That freedom of speech is meant to be used by the members to express their views honestly. Freedom of speech has been given for two reasons. One is that in a legislative body, members must be able to freely express their views, irrespective of the consequences. So, if a member makes a libelous statement, kind of a defamatory statement in the House, if it goes on record, nobody can go to court and challenge this. So, the members cannot be hauled up before the court for what they say in the House. They are absolutely free. Because whatever they speak, that is subject to the rules of the House and the Constitution. The Speaker will be there to regulate that. Otherwise, there is absolute freedom of speech. But freedom of speech operates in another field. I mean, freedom of speech means something more than this. That is, the members of the House must be able to speak freely, irrespective of what their government thinks. That doesn't happen in any legislature, in Parliament, neither in Parliament nor in any legislature.
Sure. So if I could just ask one follow-up here. Towing the party line is something that we see whether it's in the state legislature or whether it's in the Union Parliament. Lawmakers have to abide by the law of majority rule of their particular party. So while on paper this may sound good that the freedom of expression and freedom of speech both need to be used in the state legislature as well as the Union Parliament by members of the ruling party, isn't it easier said than done? And more than that, so because you had so much expertise in this field and you've seen it up front, isn't it very rare for someone like Mr. Swami or someone like of that stature to sort of stand up to the central figure of authority, which is the ruling party? It is rare. So are we sort of hoping against hope that this happens, or is this just a theory?
It is not a theory. This has happened. I have seen it happening in the earlier parliaments. In fact, when Nehru was the Prime Minister, his son-in-law was his principal opponent. He used to bring up issues in Parliament, and that ended in inquiry commissions being set up against government's own ministries. So that kind of a situation was there. Members of Parliament and members of the legislature used to hold very strong opinions on this, and the government used to respect them. That was the case earlier. But as I told you, very strong, the phenomenon of a strong leader emerged. Then to that extent the parliament became weaker. And then people were overwhelmed by or overawed by the presence of the leader. That leader syndrome, that is in fact affecting seriously the independence of parliament, and it has diminished the stature of parliament also.
So when we look at state legislatures as opposed to the Union Parliament, are the problems pretty much the same in the state legislature with the lawmakers as they are with MPs in Parliament, or is there a certain difference in how the House conducts itself and how the members conduct themselves?
No, all the state legislatures and Parliament have the same rules, more or less the same rules, and the same practices. And the state legislatures normally, they look towards Parliament for guidance on these matters. They have framed their rules basically on the pattern of these Parliament rules. So there is great uniformity in the rules of procedure and the practices which are followed in the state legislatures.
So I'm just going to try and also ask you more about the platform that we are here to talk about, which is NLC Bharat. Now I think we've decrypted for the listeners about what the rules of parliament are and what the problems are that are facing the Union Parliament as well as state legislatures. How does a platform like National Legislators Conference Bharat sort of go ahead and solve this issue? What we know so far is that it provides a common non-partisan platform for lawmakers from all across the country to come together, for the brilliant minds to sort of come together and learn from each other's best practices over a 4-day event which will happen for the first time this June. How does this really address the issues that we have enumerated before this?
Look, this since it is happening for the first time, everything that is or that can be said about this platform, is kind of tentative at the moment, because it's a platform that is being set up. And here we have a certain idea about what should be discussed there and how to go about it. So when that is done, when the conference gets underway, then we will know in which direction it is going. At the moment, of course, we have formulated, I mean, to look into that, certain themes and sub-themes and all that. There will be detailed discussion on these themes. There will be plenary sessions and all that. For that, there will be separate themes. And then there will be committees kind of thing. Because suppose around 1,500, 2,000 legislators participate. Then we will have to divide them into different committees, and then each committee will discuss important, relevant topics, and maybe in the form of a resolution or something, finally the outcome of deliberations in that committee. So similarly, in all the committees, maybe about 10 or 15 committees will be meeting simultaneously and discussing issues. So a lot of paperwork is involved and a lot of ideas will come up.
This also sounds very historic, sir, in a way, because I don't think 1,500, 2,000 legislators have come together on a common platform ever since the time of independence, if I'm not wrong on that.
No, never. It is happening for the first time.
Is it the need of the hour, Acharya sir?
It is in fact a very good idea, a very brilliant idea to assemble the legislators together and create a platform for them to express their views and to interact with others and share their experiences. So that by itself, is going to create great impact. The very fact that such a conference is being held, quite apart from the issues that will be discussed and conclusions that will be arrived at, all that. But the very fact that a conference of this nature is being held itself is a very, very great thing.
Yeah, it's pretty magnanimous, sir, that for the first time we're going to have such a large gathering of lawmakers.
Yes. And then we will go into the details of the themes and the dimensions of each theme, and then the sub-themes, and then ensure the participation of people. So we have to, it is not like a meeting of the assembly.
Sure.
So it is something different. It's a very purposive kind of discussion, and for that, we have to identify the speakers who can speak on a particular issue. So that exercise will be done here.
So, sir, would it be beneficial for lawmakers, to, now that we're sort of stating that they are pressed for time because they are more engrossed in their constituency work, will this sort of new lawmaking or this new learning process of learning from each other, of cutting across party lines and learning from each other at the NLC Bharat platform, will that trickle down to the common voter? Will we see better laws being made? Will we see sharper minds at work creating sharper legislation for voters?
Well, that should happen. Actually, members of the legislature, their job is what? They have been elected to represent them in the parliament or the state legislature.
Correct.
The state legislatures and parliament are supposed to make law for the people. And they are the lawmakers. So they discuss it, analyze it for the people, and they pass it. This is what happens. Suppose they don't address these issues properly, or they don't understand the issues properly, then you will have a bad law.
Sure.
And if they don't have enough of time to go into this, study this, and make suggestions, the law suffers. The society will get a bad law. That is it. So the quality suffers. If you want to have quality legislations, then the members must be able to, or they must be given, they must be allowed to put their mind to it fully. That is the thing.
My last question, before we sort of wrap up this podcast is a big theme or a big part that is being spoken about NLC Bharat is the fact that it aims to bring lawmakers together on a common platform, on a common non-partisan platform. But the bigger point is that it aims to cut across party lines. This is seeming something that is historic and something that is envisioned very out of the box, because as we discussed earlier, lawmakers are sort of required to toe the party line. Do you think there would be a certain hesitancy with lawmakers learning from each other when they are sitting across the aisle?
Well, this is something which is happening, which is a reality. After all, these are political parties, and members of these political parties tend to take a partisan view of things.
Right.
And that becomes more pronounced, and that becomes unacceptable at some level. Because when you encourage or promote sectarian politics, then you will have this kind of a problem. People will become absolutely partisan, and they will not be able to rise above their party lines.
It becomes a stalemate situation where no
Yes.
one is really benefiting.
But I will tell you, in Parliament, they had set an example for working in a non-partisan way. In fact, the entire committee system of Parliament has been designed this way. That means the members will rise above their party lines and address issues. That is a tradition which was set long back, and during the time of Mavalankar, Nehru and all that. That is the model, or that is the template actually for legislators to emulate. Rise above the party lines. When you sit in the committees, those committees are doing the detailed things, which are done by the committees.
Sure.
And legislatures or parliament and the state assemblies, they don't go into the nitty-gritty of things. So it is these committees which are examining all the things in detail. And that is where you want to have a non-partisan approach to issues. Whether it is an investigation or whether it is something else, whether it's an impact study of something, there people should have a common objective, and people should rise up the party lines and look at the issue as it is.
So will NLC Bharat sir as a platform help lawmakers sort of rediscover their sense of individuality?
Certainly, as I said in the beginning, the freedom of speech and all that,
Correct.
that needs to be promoted, and people should understand the various dimensions of that freedom of speech. What exactly it means on the ground. Can you speak against the government? It's not against the government. It is actually analyzing an issue threadbare, the pros and cons. And you say that if you proceed with this bill, if it is implemented, if it is enforced as a law, then this is going to be the consequences. If you are able to do that, that is not being done now. That honest analysis, honest assessment of things which are done by the government or proposed by the government is not being done because of the fear of leadership. Because leadership wants to do things in a particular way, and that may not be the right way. But members are not able to say what they want because of the fear of the leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Achary, for sharing your views and insights on NLC Bharat. And thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in.